The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
TV party tonight! What? TV party tonight! Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't want to talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hippo Toes.
Scary dog!
Dancing at Blurnsville. Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting Premier Podcast TV Party Tonight. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is him, otherwise known as you, Season 5, brought to you by the good people at Netflix and a bunch of other production studios that aren't on the Season 5 Wikipedia page. And joining me tonight is him, Jason Teasley. How do you do, sir?
I'm doing good. Actually, a lot better than I have been in quite some time. But this show really disappointed me. And we'll get into that soon. But yeah, this went out on a whimper.
This overrated welcome at least a season. It probably should have ended when he burnt the fucking house down after season 3. But
yeah, the first 3 seasons great. The last 2 seasons, steep decline.
It is amazing how much this has in common with Weeds. You know, where both like solid first 3 seasons really nailed the premise and then stayed 2 seasons too long, and how much in both shows they were trying to squeeze juice out of a dead fruit.
Well, I mean, that's the same argument people have about the last season of Dexter, the original Dexter run.
You know what's funny about that? So my girlfriend asked me tonight, because this is why she's the best girlfriend I've had. She'll ask me, like, what is my podcast on tonight? What's the topic? Whether or not she's going to listen, whether or not she even knows what I'm talking about, she always wants to know what it is I'm talking about. Tonight she asked me, what's the topic? What's the format? What's the discussion? And I said, we're going to talk You, Season 5. She was like, yeah, I watched about half a season of that, and I realized it wasn't for me. And I said, well, was it like a too romantic version of Dexter? And she was like, that just about sums it up. Here's the funny thing about that, Jason Teasley. I haven't watched a single episode of Dexter.
Oh, you'd love Dexter. Dexter is definitely in your wheelhouse. I will give that the utmost recommendation, because I know how you are and how your mind works. So yeah, Dexter is one of those things that you would be really immersed in, but you would, after the Trinity Killer, you would lose all interest. The Trinity Killer in Dexter is the pinnacle of the series.
And that's season 3?
I think it's season 2. Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4.
Okay. Whatever you're doing to your microphone, stop, because you were like in and out, like you're hitting it or something. Yeah, I think that's been my thing with You. When you and Pat pitched me You, I remember the shows we've done on them, and I would say, like, I was really into it for the first 3 seasons. Then by the time we got to season 4, it felt like more of the same. And then 5 literally feels like they didn't have a story. So they stretched out what they did have way too long. And then it was like, well, it's the year of our Lord 2025, and we're not Marvel Studios, so we can get away with this. Let's do an angry woman power fantasy. And voila, I mean, some might say the bad guy got it in the end, so like they all do in these kinds of shows. Vic Mackey gets it in the end. He gets it in the end. McNulty gets it in the end. But This did feel a little cynical towards the end.
This was the empowerment of woke
Yeah.
media on steroids. Because like we talked, and anybody can go back and listen to our previous shows. The first 3 seasons we gushed over. We absolutely loved. Then season 4 was you slog through it because you can't understand, you can't get the premise behind season 4. You have the spoiler, the disassociated identity,
Yeah.
which was a little bit of a stretch.
I will say this: my only defense of season 4 is that at least was interesting. After 3 seasons of kind of the same thing, just with different setups, at least the you in you was him.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying I didn't mind for basically the quote unquote psychotic break that he has this dissociative disorder. It was a great premise, but I felt they rushed it the last 3 episodes to try to wrap it up in a nice tight little bow.
Yeah.
This season was, and I'll go back to this, and this is something I've talked to with a few other people. Love was the pinnacle of the series. Love was my favorite character. She was batshit crazy, but she loved Joe. She was batshit crazy because she loved Joe.
Yeah.
And she was also attractive. Why would you downgrade to the librarian season 3 and 4, who looks like one of the Wakanda warriors, and then you finally find quote unquote happiness. You find a successful, very attractive businesswoman who can give you everything, and then you downgrade from that to some little hobbit chick you found sneaking around a store. I say this in the fact that if you're going to pursue somebody, make it believable, make it to where they're at least on par with what you have. Don't downgrade.
Okay. I'm going to come back to that because I think that's an interesting discussion, and it needs a counter argument, but propriety is the thing here. So here's what happens in season 5, if you'll indulge me. In the 5th and final season of Netflix's You, Joe Goldberg's journey comes full circle, returning to New York City in a bid to start anew. However, his past and inherent dark desires soon catch up with him, leading to a dramatic and fitting conclusion, some might say. 3 years after the events in London, Joe, played by Penn Badgley, is back in New York, as I said before, with his wife, Kate, who was played by Charlotte Ritchie, and their son, Henry. Kate has taken over her family's company, and Joe has reopened Mooney's bookstore, attempting to lead a quiet, reformed life. Publicly, he is seen as a devoted husband and father and well-dressed pet. I may have added that last part. But internally, he struggles, don't you understand, with his unresolved compulsions. Joe's attempt at normalcy is disrupted when he meets Bronte, played by Madeline Brewer, a mysterious woman who shares his love for literature. Their connection rekindles Joe's obsessive tendencies, leading him down a familiar, dangerous path. Unbeknownst to Joe, Bronte is actually Louise Flannery. Dun, dun, dun. A woman seeking justice for her friend Beck. You know Beck. She was the dope from season 1, one of Joe's first victims. Louise, along with a group of online sleuths, take a break from TikToking to investigate Joe and aim to expose his crimes. Louise's plan culminates forever in a live stream video capturing Joe committing a murder, shattering his public image. As the evidence mounts, Joe's world unravels. In a desperate attempt to escape, he flees with Louise, who confronts him about his past. Their confrontation turns violent, resulting in Joe's arrest. He is tried and sentenced to multiple life terms in prison, finally facing the consequences of his actions. The series concludes with Joe incarcerated, isolated, and stripped of his manipulative charm. Despite his imprisonment, he remains unrepentant, blaming society for his downfall in what I think is the funniest final line of any movie I've ever seen, of any show I've ever seen.
Yes.
This ending serves as a commentary on accountability and the dangers of romanticizing toxic behavior. The showrunners aim to deliver a conclusion that emphasizes justice and the importance of confronting one's actions. Season 5 brings Joe Goldberg's story to a close, highlighting the consequences of unchecked obsession and the importance of facing the truth. The final season is available for streaming on Netflix. Let me tell you, just kind of going right into this. Season 5 is not great, but the motivations in Season 5 made sense to me, and here's why. I think Joe's desire to murder people is directly related to the obsession he has over a particular woman and either eliminating the obstacles between them or him getting caught up in a situation where he has to defend himself and he ends up killing the person in doing so. And then it's kind of, once you've knocked down that first domino, several more begin to follow. And now he's just killing people to cover the tracks of the last murder. That's kind of been the pattern of you. I never got the idea. Joe's obsession was about romanticizing what's the word I'm looking for? Basic women. We talked about this with season 1, where Beck was nothing special. She's a pretty girl, but there's lots of pretty girls.
She was deplorable.
But to me, she was a basic 5. You know, she was as normal girl. She was as normal a girl as you're ever going to find. But for whatever reason, Joe latched on to her and elevated her beyond the position of where she, I think, naturally stood in the grand scheme of things. And then it was about, every decision that he makes was about getting to Beck. And then it's kind of the same thing with Love. But then Love kind of joins in the chant, and now they are working in concert with each other. And then the third one mostly focused on, trying to. That's really where where the show starts to change with season 3, because then it becomes Joe desperately just trying to live a normal life, but he's so bored by the humdrum mundanity of everyday life that he seeks to quell the pain of boredom with romanticized love. So he finds another woman to obsess over and restarts the whole pattern. And that's what happens here in season 5 is for 3 years, he behaved himself, but he started to get itchy. He wasn't getting as much of the attention from Kate, and it didn't matter who was in the bookstore. It's kind of like Bill Clinton and Monica, the joke about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, or Arnold Schwarzenegger and his maid. It was what was available at the time.
Well, let me point something out.
Yeah.
What happens in season 5, what kicks everything off in his tendencies again, season 5, is Kate is about to be brought down, and Joe wants to protect his family. So, and this is a big issue I have in season 5.
Yeah.
Is Joe would not have resorted back to his murderous ways if it wasn't for Kate, but then she uses the fact that he was trying to protect her and the family and her fortune, and that kick-started off everything, and she just kind of plays the victim rather than she was the one that manipulated him to go back into the light.
That's a valid point. He's not. I was more focused on why because your statement earlier, why would you downgrade? It's not a downgrade when you see you're looking at it from your point of view, and you don't think the girl who plays Bronte is tremendously attractive, or at the very least, she is less attractive than Kate. I think most people would think so, except for maybe her mother. But
no, I talked to her. She agreed.
Okay, so we're all on board.
Okay.
That's more of what I was talking about, because you're right. He starts murdering people because they're a threat to Kate, which is in line with his behavior, but it's not attached to the woman he's obsessing over. And right now, all I'm talking about is the woman he's obsessing over. Joe,
Well,
and
that kickstarts everything, because once he murders Kate's uncle, Kate starts making him out to be the bad guy, starts shunning him and pulling away from him. So that's why when somebody shows interest in the same thing he does, he latches on to.
right.
Because he's getting shunned.
I actually agree with you. I think that's a really good point. Is he doesn't become listless and bored until she starts icing him out for doing the thing she wanted him to do in the first place.
Totally agree.
There are no good people on this show, but which is hilarious to me. But I wanted just to finish my point with Joe. I started to say that the show is, for me, again, about something that I talked about when Dorian and I reviewed 10, which is you get to a point in middle age where things don't strike you as passionately as they used to. You start to wonder, this is why people go through, this is where the whole midlife crisis thing comes.
Right.
You start to wonder, what is it all about? What does it all mean? I had somebody earlier today say, marriage takes work. You have to work to love each other after a while, because it does not come naturally. And that's very true. And Joe's way of handling it is to latch on to somebody else. And that's what brings out all of this other stuff. Which is why I think it's hilarious that through Joe, the writers of this show are scolding the audience for glorifying toxic relationships or chasing dopamine, doing the things that I think need scolding for. But this was an odd place to do that. I'll throw it over to you for some of your comments, but I wanted to just comment on all of that, because I don't think it mattered what Bronte's looks were. I think it mattered that Joe was in a place of anything to make me feel something, anything to make me feel better than I do right now. And the thing of it is that she was absolutely manipulating him. She wanted him to fall in love with her so that she could expose him for being Beck's murderer. So again, she's, for at least that character in that moment, she's the narcissist. She's the one doing the gaslighting. She's the one doing the manipulating. And because Joe is so desperate for love and attention and something to focus his energy on, he falls for it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, just to comment on that, and to kind of dovetail off one of your points, with this, I think it was more he was doing what he thought was right for Kate and his family. And then when he got basically reprimanded and scolded for it, and Kate iced him out, it awakened that passion that he had again. But when she shunned him, he needed an outlet. He needed something. And to go back, why I say, if you're going to do something, why downgrade? The reason why I say that is I'm saying, hypothetically, you want to at least have something on par with. If you're going to risk your life, make sure it's something on par. But in this case, I think, and I'm glad I get to elaborate on this, I think it's more of, especially with the librarian from season 3 and somewhat season 4 that he followed to London, and Bronte is the girls that feel unnoticed are easier prey. Which means if a girl is meek, shy, and everything, and you compliment her and everything, and you make her feel good about herself, you're going to build her up to the point where and Joe done this because he done it with Beck. Not so much love, but definitely with Beck. Because Beck had very low self-worth. Joe made her feel like she was way more than what she actually was. That's why the relationship happened. That's why he was able to manipulate her. Same thing here. But when we find out that Bronte or Louise was actually the manipulator because she got the Scooby Gang together from Reddit, which was totally pissed me off. We'll get into that a little bit later too. But the Reddit Scooby Gang, and it's just it falls apart. You could have used somebody more convincing because she was not very convincing. Looking at it as a third person, of course, you seem like some of the things that she was doing you could pick up on. And I guess I would actually contribute that more to the writing than the actress because how she was written and she was just doing the best she could with the material. But they totally neutered Joe this season. Joe went from this very driven, very methodical, very manipulative individual.
Intellectual. It's really important that you include the word intellectual because that's when you and Pat pitched me this show, I was very skeptical. What hooked me was his utter disdain for Beck and everyone around them. And it's fine. You can have disdain for somebody and also love them. Facts can confirm. But like the way he talked about Beck and how basic she was and the way he tore down everybody around him was what made me fall in love with the show, if you'll remember.
Yeah, but you look at Joe season 1 and Joe season 5.
Yeah.
They're different, very different ends of the spectrum. Joe is completely neutered. He's basically a lapdog that gets scolded and he lashes out to somebody that he feels he can manipulate.
He's whinier in season 5 than he was in 1. In 1, he had a very cold disdain for people. And in 5, he's like, why won't Kate talk to me? Why won't Kate love me? Why? Ugh.
And it goes back to, the whole thing we talked about. I hate to say it like this, but the woke persona that they wanted to push into this. Mm-hmm. You didn't really see it in the first 4 seasons. You did, but it kind of slid in and out. But this season, it was not
as prevalent as it was this season.
Yeah, they basically beat you. It was really heavy-handed, beat you over the head because you took this very manipulative, narcissistic, intellectual murderer and made him the exact person that he manipulates. Mm-hmm. And it's like, he's more intelligent you build him up to be more intelligent than being able to be easily manipulated by some Reddit chick. Now, if they would have sprinkled her into season 2 maybe, or another season and just kind of did the Beck connection and then just let it organically grow, it would have been better. But they basically was like, oh, I had class with Beck and she was a TA in one of my classes and she gave me a book and now I'm obsessed with her and trying to find her something.
She told me my writing was good, so I was in love with her, and how could you take her from me is how that went.
Yeah, it's like, what you're romanticizing her, mm-hmm. but you're making Joe like this martyr to be like, oh, well, maybe society shouldn't romanticize these evil people. It's a fucking TV show.
The problem is you.
People need to realize, and I can speak myself. I'll go out on a limb, speak for Pat and Robert as well. We'd like the villains to win. Mm-hmm. Hell, Robert had a whole podcast on it. Everyone loves a bad guy because we like the villains. We like to cheer for the villains. Mm-hmm. That's why one of my favorite TV shows is Dexter, because Dexter is a serial killer, but he has a moral compass. Joe, not so much a moral compass, but he was a cool serial killer. Mm-hmm. And that's what sells. I mean, yeah, society is obsessed with serial killers. Look at all the murder podcasts and all that's going on right now. I'm surprised somebody hasn't pitched one to you. I'm sure they have. You just said fuck off.
I am too small for anyone to pitch me anything.
Yeah, you're a catcher anyway. Anyway, you're a power bottom. I understand. But yeah, you take one of the cool TV shows and the cool characters that is a villain, and you basically make him a whiny little bitch.
I want to talk.
It infuriates me.
I want to switch topics a little bit. I don't know if there's any more you want to add to that. I
No, we can go whatever direction you want. You're fucking this football. I'm just holding it.
My favorite actor in this is Anna Camp. And her playing the dual role of Maddie and Reagan, I love her. I think she did a stellar job playing those two distinctly different characters. But I also think she has like the best stuff of the season. And Maddie in particular is about the only character I feel even remotely sorry for in this entire season.
Yes. I think, playing a dual role is hard to pull off, especially with such a stark contrast from being the really uptight, mogul, business-driven person that is strictly business, bitchy, boardroom go. And then on the flip side, you've got the whole party girl, everything that's just writing about her name is nepotism at its finest, that she's even got a job in the company. And she has no. I
think it's even harder than that though, because Reagan is such an awful person, and Maddie loves Reagan's husband, and Maddie loves Reagan's daughter, whom she carried. And there's a segment of the season, where Maddie has to be mean to both, and it's tearing her apart, because not only is that not who, like, she didn't want this to begin with, because she told Joe, like, I'm not my sister. We're two distinctly different people. No one's gonna buy this. And then having to be her sister eats at her soul. And then on top of that, she's made to feel so awful for going off on the brother-in-law, who's now the boyfriend, and her daughter, essentially. And it's just, and Anna Camp does a really, really good job of letting that all weigh on her and tear her apart.
Especially the scene in the bathroom where I forget, somebody shows up and they're wanting to talk to Maddie, and she just has this entirely, like, you could see basically her whole facade crumbling around her, and she's trying to pull off both sides at the same time, and it's just and it's really hard. And then she just finally breaks down, and like, you don't know what's going on. I think it's Kate. Yeah, it's Kate shows up at the house and wants to talk to Maddie, and you just see her totally try to pull it off and try to play the dual roles simultaneously behind the door, and then she just realizes that I'm broken and I have to not live the lie anymore. And it's an attribute to her being able to play that dual role and play it so convincingly.
Yeah, totally agree. I think she does an excellent job in this. And I think she's the best actress in this thing. I want to, as we start to move to the back half of the podcast, we've talked about Joe and how emasculated he was by the end of this. Let's focus in a little bit more on Bronte. They give her a lot.
They give her too much.
And then that last episode or two after the fire at Mooney's, rather, and they go on the run. you don't realize how slight of a character she really is until all you have is her and Joe. And I think the actress is doing her level best, but I don't think the actress is all that great either.
She doesn't emote very well.
No.
It's very cardboard cutout-ish. It's very, especially with somebody like Penn Badgley. Penn Badgley can, just his facial expressions and stuff can carry a scene. She was very cardboard. She was very, very paint by numbers, is a good term.
Prestige television is an interesting thing because prestige television gets a lot of actors who are just TV actors. Like you rarely see them in the movies, if ever. They are solidly on television, and that in and of itself is a wide berth. Because you've got some actors kind of at the barely passable end that make a go of it on TV and have very successful television careers because you don't need the same presence and charisma and ability on television that you need to carry a big screen feature. But you do occasionally get some that can walk the line between both. You have some television actors that are just Jennifer Aniston probably is a really great example of this.
Yes.
All the shit she got. Jennifer Aniston was great on Friends, but was also great in the movies. Just to name one off the top of my head. The only one in this show besides Penn Badgley, who I think is probably just as good on TV as she would be in the movies. I haven't looked at her Wikipedia yet to suss this out. Was Anna Camp. The lady who plays Bronte is solidly a low-tier television actress.
She is a Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
Pinnacle. Yeah, Anna Camp. And what's good about it is, I know Anna Camp from Pitch Perfect.
Oh my God, that's right. That's her. So yeah, she has been in features.
Yeah, so I know her from Pitch Perfect. So that's the kind of role that I was expecting. But when she got to stretch her acting chops and show what great actress she can be when giving the opportunity and not to be pigeonholed into that character of Pitch Perfect. Yeah, she came off bitchy, but it was in a comedy. You didn't see her, you couldn't take her serious. This, you see her be able to stretch her legs, be able to be a serious actress and show her range by playing the dual role. And you're like, wow, I'm blown away by her abilities and her being able to be so convincing in the roles.
It's funny. I'm looking at Anna Camp's Wikipedia. She's been in a shit ton of movies, many of which we've seen or talked about. But she's also been in a shit ton of television. Now I got to look at Madeline Brewer. See. Yeah,
it's going to say like Hallmark movie, extra.
So okay, not nearly as many credits.
You don't say.
She's in 7 episodes of the first season of Orange is the New Black as Trisha Miller, who I don't even remember.
Oh, God. I just started rewatching that again, so I have to look for her.
She's in an episode of Black Mirror. She has a main role in The Handmaid's Tale. She plays Janine Lindo.
Nobody cares.
And she's been nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Drama Series.
Nobody cares.
That's that. Movies, she's been in nothing I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's like third teenager in the foreground of a B movie.
Yeah, she's not in anything of real note here.
No, I mean, I think she would work really good in like Crackoon or Murder Sloth or something like that.
I take it back. She was in the 2019 Hustlers. The stripper movie with Jennifer Lopez.
I never watched it.
It's on my list of things to check out.
Oh, well, let me know how it goes.
I will. Anyway, yeah, there's definitely a discrepancy in acting ability and presentation with some of these people. What I was getting to with her was she definitely feels like the self-insert for a lot of like the writers and producers of this series, whereas she's the girl that can do everything. Like the term Mary Sue gets thrown around a lot these days, and I feel like they gave her so much. She was able to do so much in the show, and they worked very, very hard to write her in a way where she comes off like morally scot-free. This was all about avenging Beck, and everything she does is about that. And even then, like, and then because this is clearly a show written for women, there's a bit where they're just like, oh, but I don't want him to go to prison anymore. I love him, but I also know that he's a bad guy, and so I can't be with him. And woe is Bronte. And I'm watching this going, ugh. There are times where I always get mad at you guys. Like, why does he make us watch this? I actually had one of those moments, like things I do for my friends.
Hey, we won't talk about some of the things you've made me watch.
That's right, we won't. I'll turn this car around.
But yeah, I mean, you did come into this kicking and screaming. Me and Pat was adamant to get you on, and I kind of miss Pat being on here. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he would have a lot to say about the downfall of Joe Goldberg.
If we're struggling with this, I can only imagine how Pat would have acted.
Oh, I'm pretty sure Pat would have probably punched a hole through his wall and then went out and gave somebody a pair of Irish sunglasses. But yeah, I mean, there's shows like this, and we talk about it, the morally gray, and that's popular now. People being in the morally gray, and this is what You is. You is one of those fringe shows that's in the morally gray. Dexter, Breaking Bad is another one. The Wire, you love The Wire, which is on my list to watch. I've actually got it saved. Just got to find time to watch it with summer coming up and the new job. I have plenty of time. But yeah, these are some morally gray shows. The Shield is another one that you want to root for the bad guy, and your moral compass comes into question, and that makes a good TV show. But when you take and you go off a steep decline with not only the product but the characters in the show, it makes you lose a lot of your audience, and we can see that because if you go on TikTok or Instagram or anything, this season is getting fucking brutally lambasted.
Is it really? What are they saying about it?
Oh, I mean, they're just the same things we are. How can you neuter Joe? How can you go for this female empowerment? Kate was the reason why Joe reverted back to his ways, and then she blames him for everything that she caused, but she's got to be the moral high ground. Oh, I mean, it gets lambasted. Like, people are like, they should have ended it after season 3, or you should have had where Love didn't actually, the house blew up, but somehow Love got out, and Love was the one that actually showed up to take Joe down. Because having him taken down by the Scooby Gang from Reddit was very weak. Yeah, especially when you had some really characters. I think, and I know this is a stretch, and I know this is, you'll roll your eyes at me. I think the person that should have took Joe down was Jenna Ortega from season 2.
Yeah, I only barely remembered she was in season 2.
Yeah, she was the little sister of the girl that Joe was obsessing after while dating Love, that lived in the same apartment complex. And then she just gets vanquished, sent away to a private school once her sister died, and Joe is funding her education, sending books to her. And that's the last thing you hear of her. If she was the one that, when you started seeing things pop up to Joe, and you could have done her a one episode cameo. You could have just had like somebody manipulating Joe from the shadows, basically catfishing Joe via the internet, and then just have him be his downfall be Gina Ortega from season 2, or somebody more connected to the series, like Love's mom, like that would have been plausible.
I
But
want to talk,
this goes off the rails hardcore.
I want to talk about this, and this will probably be the last thing I bring up before we start to close out. Kate is a morally compromised character. Kate
Yes.
is willing to take the high ground so long as she's not under attack or duress in any way. And the minute things start to get hard for her, she gives up. And then she leans on Joe to do her dirty work for her. But then she sees, as you put it before, but then she sees Joe as also,
Liability.
well, morally bankrupt.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's funny because I threw it to ChatGPT. I said, I need talking points. We're kind of running out of stuff to talk about. And one of the things that it threw at me was, the mirror image thing between Louise and Joe, and Louise posing as Bronte to trap Joe mirrors how Joe has manipulated identities for 5 seasons. And I was like, I don't think that Louise is the mirror image of Joe. I think Kate is.
Yeah. More so Kate was, because it's when she started, because it all starts with her being attacked for a some kind, I think it was like a cancer research or something that killed a bunch of kids, and she wants to keep it secret because she's got an image to protect.
Right.
Well, as soon as that even she gets whiff of that's a possibility to be exposed, she turns to Joe. I need you to take care of this. And then once he takes care of it, to save him and her and the kid, to make sure that they're like, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you've done that.
Right.
It's like no, she wants to reap the rewards, but not the accountability. And it goes back to where she killed the kids.
She is so that partner of, the partner that comes to you and tells you about all of her problems but doesn't want any solutions.
Yeah, when you give a solution, it's like, oh my God, how can you say?
Do you remember when we talked about White Men Can't Jump, and we were talking about that scene with Rosie Perez, and she was like, no, Billy, when I tell you that I'm thirsty, I don't want you to bring me a glass of water.
Right, yeah.
I want you to feel how thirsty I am. I want you to empathize with my thirst. And Woody Harrelson's like, you're thirsty, drink water, you dumb bitch. What's wrong with you?
Right. I mean, that's how God's wired. That we take things at face value. We don't try to read into stuff. We can't read minds.
Kate's like, I want you to clean up my mess, but I don't want to face the fact that you cleaned up my mess. I don't want to know. I want plausible deniability because I want to maintain my perceived or projected moral purity. Like, again, she's not a moral person. She is morally bankrupt. I think even more so than Joe. Because here's the thing. Every man must have a code, speaking of The Wire. When Joe kills, he very rarely kills out of necessarily passion. It's either self-defense or it's to eliminate an obstacle. But it's essentially he just does a math problem, and the problem ends with murder. Okay? Solve for X is murder. And that's it. This is what passion is he's going to put into this. She, on the other hand, feels all of these things and wants them, but doesn't want to deal with the consequences of them. Like, for her, I think Joe knows Joe's coming from the standpoint of view when he murders somebody of, in order to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. I don't even think she cares that much. Her caring is directly related to what the consequences of doing the action might be. So I only care about this because I might get caught and lose everything, or this might make me look bad. That's the whole thing with Kate, and I think there's a lot of jealousy with Kate and Joe, where Kate envies the fact that Joe can move through the world unburdened. And she is so burdened by the chains of indecisiveness that she takes it out on Joe that he can move in the world so freely.
And the fact that Joe has, I mean, Joe's like, and I want to say this as Joe, but Joe's like every other man. We're dead inside. And the fact that he can do
Preach,
stuff
brother.
for those that he loves, to protect the ones he loves, and without remorse. I mean, Joe has no remorse what he does to protect those he loves.
Your audio is not great tonight, so in case everyone missed it, I want to make sure it's said because it's the best line of this entire show. Joe's like every other man, dead inside.
Yeah, I mean, we are. We protect those we love without repercussion.
Yeah.
And we'll do that. But Kate is basically she's envious of that because Joe is so unburdened by what he has to do to protect his family, and she's like a guilty conscience. She like you said earlier, she wants everything handed to her, but she doesn't want to get her hands dirty doing it.
You know, it's funny. I was having a conversation with my girlfriend both last night and tonight, and I said, you know, I know women want, they want gifts and they want getaways and they want expensive dinners and they want romance. They want rose petals and flowers and, you know, bubble baths, and they want to be catered to and taken care of, and given without need of reciprocity. And I said, you know what the most romantic thing I want is to help you sort your mail because you haven't gone through it for the last 6 months. Or
even better yet, and we get into this all the time. You know what makes a lot of guys happy? Peace and quiet. If you can get an hour of peace and quiet, you're a happy person.
I said something very similar. I said I don't need much. Take a thing off my plate, just one. Any one thing off my plate.
Yeah, just pick something.
Yeah. Handle a thing for me, and I will do everything. I don't care if the relationship is 2 to 98. Take the 2.
Yeah, I mean, and that's goes for a lot of guys. And it goes back to the meme. I see the meme. It says you work 40 hours a week and you come home and this is what you have, and it's got like some fries and chicken nuggets and everything. It says, would you be upset? Hell no, I love me some chicken nuggets and fries. You give me 10 minutes to eat my chicken nuggets and fries without bothering me, I'm all yours the rest of the weekend.
I'm grateful to not have to make it myself.
Right. And I'm grateful and not have to deal with some fast food worker that's going to screw my order up anyway.
Yeah. So all of that to say, Kate wants and wants and wants from Joe. And then Joe's like, okay, well, love me now. And she's like, no, I think you're terrible.
I think you're horrible.
Hang on. Interesting and familiar dynamic. I'm so glad I went to ChatGPT because it got us on this kick. What a great and wonderful dynamic this is. Do for me. I will do for you, my queen. I have done for you, my queen. Do you love me now? No, it's not enough. Do more. All right. I will do twice as much for you. I will do 3 times as much. Now will you love me?
No.
I am burdened by your request for love. What will it take, my queen? What will it take? Nothing. You've done so much for me. I think you're terrible.
Yeah, and that's society as a whole now. And I've seen this on a podcast, the Whatever podcast. It's like they was talking. If nobody's not familiar, it's got all these. It's basically a conservative podcast that has all these like OF girls on it trying to defend why they do OF.
Oh, is this the one with the young guys? They're at a long table. It's the guys on one side, the chicks on the other.
Yes, that's the Whatever podcast.
Is that what that is? I see it comes up on my TikTok all the time.
Yeah, that's the Whatever podcast. It's a great podcast. Highly recommend you listen to it. But I got sidetracked. But anyway, it's it goes back to
welcome to Old Man Discovers Social Media.
No, it goes back to the fact that women complain that men are too toxic, too masculine, and everything. But then they go back and say, well, no guys are approaching me. Why can't I get attention? And it's like, well, you said that's not what you want.
Yeah.
So guys said, okay, we'll give you that. And now you're bitching because we give you exactly what you want and you're not happy.
And that is a great succinct explanation of the Kate Joe relationship. Kate
Yes.
says, "Gimme." Joe says, "Here." Then she complains that Joe said, "Here."
It goes back
And
to
then we wonder why then Joe took the first hobbit that happened to crawl into his
literally,
life. You know,
literally crawling into his life.
he's like, "I'll take." Listen, not to get too personal, but at a time when Melissa and I were, even before all the open poly stuff, at a time where we were not doing great, she was highly depressed. Like, she wanted nothing to do with me. She really wanted nothing to do with the kids. You know, she was just crying in the room all the time. And then she wondered why I got a thrill from whatever attention I got at work. Not that it went anywhere, not that I would do anything, because I would have never cheated on my wife. But, you know, there were a handful of girls that I worked with, nurses, the most toxic people you could ever come across.
I will fully agree. If you haven't seen the meme I put, it says what we thought whores looked like and what they actually looked like, and
Yes.
it shows prostitutes and then it shows nurses.
Nurses, the walking red flag.
Yeah.
But you know, I work with a lot of young women at my former place of employment, and they were giving me a lot of attention, just short of sexual, and I loved it because it was the only attention I was getting. Would I have preferred it from Melissa? 110%. Was I going to get it from Melissa? Not that time. You know, and
Right.
which goes back to the whole Joe thing. Was I'm giving, I'm getting nothing back, and a man can't live on leaves alone.
Right. And I fully agree with that. And it's like the old adage of, you know, I say jump, you say how high. Now with women, it's I say jump, you jump and ask if it's high enough.
All right. Anything else that you want to talk about before we close out for the night? Because I pretty much covered all the stuff I had to say about this show. Before we spend another hour on toxic relationships.
No, I think we can wrap it up in a tight 1 hour podcast, because I mean this like I said, this season went out in a fizzle. If this was like more like season 1 or 2 and had that superior writing, we could probably go on and on. But this was very lackluster. It was very social commentary.
I was going to say, this is like the post-feminism woke version of nailing Jesus to the cross, and Jesus is a toxic male.
Oh, I thought you were just going to say nailing Jesus, and I was like, this took a really dark turn, Mark.
Look what happened to Joe. Like, look, everything that happens to Joe feels like, you know, the Passion of the Christ. It's like just Jesus walking, and everyone's like throwing shit at him.
Okay, so there's a TikTok clip. Joe is comparing Joe Goldberg to Jesus Christ. Joe Goldberg is toxic Jesus. Okay, we got a TikTok clip. There we go.
The title of this TikTok is the Passion of Toxic Jesus.
The passion of Joe Goldberg, toxic Jesus.
Perfect.
Oh,
alrighty. Well, yeah. This ends with Joe in prison, and he does a whole monologue, and it's like, maybe the problem is you know. And I swear to God, that's how one of the episodes of Family Guy ended. You know, it's like, maybe you should raise kids, eh? And
what's funny about it is too, and just real touch on this quick, they act like writing to serial killers in prison is a new phenomenon. It happens all the time. Charles Manson was getting people romanticizing him, and
women love a bad boy, and there ain't nothing badder than a fucking serial killer. You know how many serial killers get fucking laid in prison? A lot.
And that was just by you. But anyway, let's wrap this up. You threw me. That was at softball, Mark.
Oh, you.
The problem is you.
The problem is you. All right, folks. That is our review of You, season 5. Kind of fun week, kind of. Started off with a review of Thunderbolt, which went off the rails awfully quickly, and I fucking checked out of it. But then I came back just to tell people that I think the relationship between the studio and the fans is the worst thing ever, and I can't wait for it to be over. I am at this point. I am like excited for Secret Wars more than Endgame because I'm hoping this is the end of Marvel. Like it just goes away for a while.
Oh, no, that's not happening.
And
They've got that cat. They've got that pig tied up in the bedroom, hog tied in the bedroom, beating it to death till it can give no more money.
We've already talked about Toxic Jesus. Don't bring it up again.
Yeah.
Anyway, then speaking of which, Harry Broadhurst and I did an Indie-Siders last night, as a matter of fact. We talked about the Paul Heyman promo, Becky Lynch promo, we reviewed Backlash, and then, I don't know, Harry babbled for 20 minutes. So I lost my internet getting electric for like a good solid 20 minutes. So Harry babbled about some Southern pro wrestling organization called Action. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
Yes, sir. This week on Yield Podcast, Sunday night at 10 o'clock, Pat will be on. We're going to do a Whiskey Rebellion for the movie Havoc because he wants to do all kinds of scales and charts and diagrams, and he wants to do something a little bit different with this particular review. So that's why it's not like an on trial or part of a triple feature or anything. But we are doing a triple feature on Monday. It'll be Mick Wanamaker and Matt Kettner, and we'll be talking Nana's Summer of '69 and one of them days, Jason Teasley. It's just one of them days where you don't want to wake up. Everybody sucks. And then on Thursday, a week from tonight, we'll be doing the West Wing Season 5. Everyone says this is where the writing starts to take a nosedive. I actually thoroughly enjoyed this season, and I'll talk about that a week from tonight. Friday, which was rescheduled from Sunday, we are doing Sessions, and because she's mean to me, I'm going to get her back. The Sessions is all about Alexis and the plugs that pay her. So we're going to write a rap song about it. It's going to be fantastic. And Saturday,
my God.
Yes, sir.
I have to tune into that.
Piss me off. This is what happens. And that, as they say in the hills, is that Jason Teasley. I don't remember if you do a podcast anymore. It changes from week to week.
No, actually, I do have a kind of a big announcement. And this is something that I talked to you about and got your blessing with.
You're finally becoming the woman you've always been.
Yeah, me and Shania Twain. But coming up, everybody knows that has followed me, all three of you, knows I'm very big into fantasy football, and this is the first year that I got a invite to do a live fantasy football draft for the Scott Fishbowl charity event, which is going to be held in Nashville, Tennessee, is where I'm drafting at. So, with Mark's permission, I am going to be representing as an affiliate of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Look for me to post reels, some TikToks and stuff, and have Mark repost when I go out to Nashville to do the live draft. It is a huge event. It's the largest fantasy football draft in the world. I think there's actual live draft events in London, Asia, and Australia this year, if I remember correctly, as well as a lot of stateside drafting sites. So I will be participating in that as a representative of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
That's awesome, Jason. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us here on TV Party Tonight. For Jason Teasley, I am Toxic Jewish Man. Be well, be safe, and behave.